All the different producer categories are in the same element of organizing the movie, making sure that it all happens on time and on budget. The senior producers have more to do with selecting the script and sometimes selecting the director as well, and certainly getting the movie stars. Most of all, the senior guys, the executive producer or the producer, quote unquote, is in charge of getting the money. That's the biggest thing they have to do. Along with that, they're also in charge of getting a distribution deal, which is a critical element to have in all of your financing packages or elements, as they're sometimes called. And what I do is more in the lines of organizational jobs that have to be done in terms of getting a hold of all the crew and all the equipment and making sure the schedule makes sense, deciding where we're going to shoot it, and can we afford all of it, because they've put me in charge of the money, so we wouldn't want to go over budget, and so it usually falls on me to decide if we can afford a single item, a person or series of people or actors, as the case may be, or number of days or hours in a given location. That's pretty much comes back to me. People and stuff. People and stuff and time and money. That's pretty much it.
So who do you work the most closely with? Would it be the executive producers or?
Well, that's a fairly good question. I work with, the producer wants to know how we're doing as far as the budget is concerned. And he wants to know, he or she wants to know how we're doing as far as the schedule is concerned. And these are the kinds of things that they'll come up to me and ask. I will work, however, most closely with a production accountant on a day-to-day basis, and the production manager, who is administering the dozens and dozens of contracts, deal memos that we have with all the different crew we've got. So I will be asking him or her how we're doing as far as meeting the budget is concerned, and I'll be sitting with the production accountant a lot of the time, seeing how much we've spent so far and how much we've got left, making sure I have a really clear understanding of that so that I can not only report that back to the producers, but also so that I can advise the rest of the crew to guide their purchases accordingly.
So would you say that your position is like a liaison between the production accountant and production manager?
They talk to each other a lot as well. They don't really need me as a liaison, but I am probably between the production as a whole and the producers, and the completion bond company as well.
So one of the things I was going to ask you about was the contracts for the crew, for actors. Is that all taken care of by the production manager?
Mostly. It goes back and forth in terms of who the contract is for, who the deal memo is for, and sometimes I'll be the guy that's in charge of really finalizing the director of photography's contract or the gaffer's contract. But when it comes to the grip or the second and third assistant directors and stuff like that, generally I want to leave it with the production manager. He or she usually knows what they're doing, and they can finalize those contracts without me looking over their shoulder.
How early on production are you involved?
Well, I try and be on as soon as it appears that the producers, in their wisdom and ability, have secured some money with which to finance the movie. It's the best idea to bring on either me or someone like me as soon as possible after that. If they're thinking in terms of shooting the movie within the next half a year, then they need a budget and a schedule and all those kinds of things, and locations. Well, depending on how big a fire it is, if there's time available for them to complete casting, they don't really need me for that. So it depends, but relatively soon they ought to have a line producer on, so just so they can discuss various physical elements of the production with that person. That's another good question. It is different from movie to movie. On a TV series that I worked on, I was on for a really long time because I was sort of supervising the post-production supervisor. And so I was hanging around, and also there were different quality control issues that it was incumbent upon me to look over his shoulder. Even though he was doing a great job, we needed certain things that I knew about from the production itself to be inserted into the show. If it's a movie, usually the editor has it fairly well in hand, and the producer and director have enough of a vision, they don't really need me to babysit the situation. It depends on the film, but usually very few people get paid on the back end these days, ever. So your movie stars and your directors and everybody else, including me, generally wants to see some or most of their money up front, along with everybody else. I was an assistant director for a while, way back in the day. Excuse me. Oh, it's the coast. Hi there. Oh, hi. We were today? I thought we... I would call a Canadian distributor online in the phone book. There they are. Call them up, explain your situation, ask for a meeting. If it's a good movie, if you made a good movie, they stand to profit by your telephone call. So hopefully they'll take it. It would be advisable if you had a movie star in your movie, but they like that. It's important for you to know that. It's also important for your movie to be good. They like that too.
It really comes back to a brand. Everybody has a brand. Even you think about your Facebook site, your personal Facebook page. You've created a brand that you want people to recognize as you. You've basically molded this brand for people to see. Videos, and if you have a knack for video or video production or anything along those lines, that's really where, yeah, it's got a lot of production value to it if it's done right and if it's done well. Branding, if you can get your brand across and if you can create a brand through that medium, video, and especially video online, because I mean it's such a huge thing now. Everybody wants to have a video on YouTube or wants to have them presented to the world in video form in some way or another. If you can do it right, then it's more important in some cases than a website. You know, you can have your entire business model, like there's I think $razor a day, Dollar Shave Club, like basically just put all this money into a viral video, and they launched a business, or at least reinforced their business security through a simple, properly done video. So it's obvious more and more that video is a very, very important factor, especially when it comes to marketing or one's brand, even personally. I produced a lot of video work, commercial video work with my company. That's where I got started, doing little promotional videos, educational videos, this and that. And actually a sports promotional video for a sports superstar, a football player, got me a job developing a reality television series. And it was that kind of brought me to Toronto, developing this new TV show that got picked up. We got it picked up and we produced 13 episodes. It wasn't a smash hit, but it was a TV show, which I guess is saying something. So I think, yeah, it's important that you be where the work is. You gotta know where the work I didn't know where the work was because I wasn't sure what I wanted to do with my career. Especially, already starting it in university, you don't really have a clear view of where you're going to be taken. But yeah, once I moved to Toronto, it kind of made sense. Everything was where it needed to be, and I was, fit into that. Originally I was part of the development team for this TV show called, it was originally called Renos Uncensored. This is part of the pitch. It was supposed to be some badass renovation and construction show. Balls to the wall, really raw, in your face, nothing like anything you'd seen before. So we developed a pilot, just my company and a core group of people, the talent, the host of the show, and another executive. And we pitched it, it got picked up, HGTV loved it, and then all of a sudden when it came down to the dollars of things, who was paying the money and who wanted control over the concept, it's the network at the end of the day. So when that's a factor, everything changes. Like the little guy, which was me, because I didn't have any experience in the television industry at that point, never done anything for TV other than some commercials. My role got really thrown around a lot, and I ended up as an associate producer. And that means a lot of different things in a lot of different industries, film versus TV versus, web video production or anything like that. So for associate producer for television series, reality television, it's really piecing together the day-to-day work, making sure people are in the right place day to day, and really filling in the gaps between all the disparate areas of the production, right? We had a pretty small crew, and we didn't have a huge budget, so that meant I was a jack of all trades in some sense. I was actually doing animations at one point because I have some experience with animation. So yeah, that job, again, I find it's just, you have to be adaptable, and if you don't have that quality, if you're trying to get anything off the ground or anything like that, I think, it's, especially if you're trying to get into the production side of things, being a producer, you gotta have adaptability. And I think my years of marketing and going from web to video to print to all these various fields kind of gave me that flexibility to be able to adapt to that job.
Cool. So I guess the big question is, what is a producer? And a producer, first and foremost, before you split it in all the different ways and the different responsibilities one could have, is a producer is entrusted with taking the project from whatever stage it's presented to that producer and seeing it through in its entirety until either the end or the point that the producer is off the project. So what the producer has to be is essentially responsible for every single decision that gets made. And the only way to do that, because of the sheer volume of the decisions, is to delegate it down to a team. So if done correctly and the team is put in place, a producer really doesn't have to be as involved hands-on. And that should stay true to the vast majority of producing roles. So what you don't see on paper or online is what each producer was actually responsible for. You'll see films where there's just one producer on, you'll see films where there might be 8 producers on. And it's hard without doing research to have an understanding of what each person is responsible for. So for myself, the direction that I am moving towards is a packaging producer, which is taking a whole bunch of different entities, surrounding them around a singular intellectual property, and then realizing that property. I'm not the day-to-day guy or a line producer or anything like that. I like to start the process going and then make sure it stays on the right route so that I can then start another project. There's a micro and there's a macro approach to producing. The micro approach is the approach that most people are familiar with, which is, here's my project, I'm going to spend 2 or 3 years on it, I make it the very best it can be. The vast majority of producers will not only start in that vein, but continue in that vein for the majority of their careers. So my approach is to kind of mitigate risk, because every producer has to look at their natural competitive advantage and find out what's going to separate me from the next producer. So for me, my competitive advantage is my network and all of the relations that I have with people. So my usefulness is looking at the IP and finding out who best to surround them with at my stage. And if I've done a good enough job, that project cannot be surrounded with the same people unless I was involved. If they could have all come together on their own, there wouldn't be use for me, per se. So I really need to make sure that the network is there so that multiple projects can get off the ground and be realized, hopefully even commercial or profitable at the same time. So that's how I kind of look at myself. What I really have to do is find the best scripts to start the process on. And it takes the most time, because it's easy to have an IP and just jump into it. But if your concept never had the ability to really go out and either make money or do something new in the industry, what's the point of putting 2 or 3 years behind it? So what I'm doing is creating a slate with a whole bunch of different writers, story editors, creators, and essentially hoping that they can develop to the point where every year there are 2 or 3 films getting made. And, it's hard because at the beginning you have to put a lot of the time into gestating projects. It's easy, 2 or 3 years from now when the ugly ducklings have, fallen out and the strongest ones have survived. But right now, we're trying to get as many strong projects as possible. So the big lessons learned are, if you want to treat this as a business, you really need to spend time at the beginning, years even, picking the right projects. Because if you're not picking the right projects, you're losing control of your destiny to a degree. And when it comes to treating it as a business in the transmedia approach, if you don't have everything figured out in terms of how your IP is going to translate to story, which is going to translate to all of the sales and all the other components, don't even do it. Why begin? So it has to be thought out, and that's what I'm doing for the next little while, is making sure I've got the strongest horses in the race. So it's a challenge, and there's still a lot that I'm learning and will continue to learn, but as a producer, one of the most important things that you can do is just surround yourself with the right people. And if you believe in those people, then your project will only be as good as your team. So I like to think I've got a good team behind me, and that we'll have some good intellectual property created in the next 12, 24 months that can be realized. So.
I do television, film. I do mostly arts documentaries now. Well, I've done 4 pretty major documentaries. I did a documentary on the Downchild Blues Band, which Dan Aykroyd was the narrator, because the Downchild Blues Bands are the people who taught Dan Aykroyd about the blues. Wow. And he in turn taught John Belushi, and the Blues Brothers were formed. So the Downchild Blues Band was really the reason that the Blues Brothers exist. So I did a documentary on Downchild. Then I did one on Lloyd Axworthy, who's now the Chancellor at University of Winnipeg. Then I did one on the Samba Squad, which is a 40-piece Brazilian-style drum band based here in Toronto, community drum band. And my latest project is Bruce Cockburn, Pacing the Cage. We're having screenings at the Carlton Theatre. So I've done the film festival circuit for Bruce. We were at the Whistler Film Festival, the Global Visions Film Festival. So this is leading up to my week. So there's residual stuff to do with all of these things. Downchild was just released earlier this year on DVD. We also released the concert. I'm finishing up the tax credits for the Lloyd Axworthy project. And in Canada, when you're doing arts documentaries like mine, you get help from the government. So then Bruce Cockburn is being released on DVD, and we've just done this big theatrical push. So all of those projects, I'm developing a new project with David Clayton Thomas, who is the lead singer for Blood, Sweat and Tears, who had a bunch of hits, and balancing all that with my consulting work here at Zoomer Media and at other places.
Tax credits.
The tax credits come from the thing that is still king in Canada, which is broadcasting. You need to find yourself a broadcaster. To do what I do right now, you need to find yourself a broadcaster. The broadcaster gives you a chunk of money. If there's a CMF envelope attached to that broadcaster, you could double that money, and then you get your tax credits on top of that, your provincial tax credits and your federal tax credits. It's a long process. All of these films that I'm talking about, these are 3-4 year projects.
Yeah. Can you give me an example of a broadcaster in Canada?
Well,
just like Rogers or
yeah. Rogers is a broadcaster, but what I'm talking about is if you come up with an idea, say you want to do a documentary on glasses. Well, the first thing you have to think of is who would broadcast this? You look at Rogers. Rogers has City TV, they have Tech TV, they have Biography, what else? They have Sportsnet. Then you look at Shaw TV, they have Global and Food and Slice, and then there's CTV, Bell Media, and they have CTV and Much Music and Bravo and all these other things. So it's one of those channels that's going to license you if they like your idea.
Okay.
You have to make presentations. You have to be a bit of a sales.
Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, no problem.
That's great.